The colonel said, "Any jet will do." But when the A-10 showed up first, he stood frozen, because that call sign hadn't been heard since a pilot was court-martialed for saving 18 lives. No one authorized the takeoff. No one filed a flight plan. But someone answered the call. They thought she was gone. But in the darkest hour, she returned. Join Life Moral Tales as we uncover the unofficial journey of a pilot erased from the system, but never from the skies. A story of courage that defies orders and outlives protocol. The war room was drowning in red. Colonel Douglas McAllister stood frozen before the digital battlefield map. Dozens of crimson markers pulsed angrily across the terrain, each one a signal flare of danger. Enemy movement, artillery positions, and worst of all, Alpha 3's last known location. A unit of 12 infantrymen, cut off deep in contested territory. Communications were deteriorating. Artillery was closing in. Air support had been requested twice. No response. "Just get me any pilot," McAllister snapped. "I don't care what it is. Jets. I need jets." Staff scrambled through readiness reports. F-35s were grounded for diagnostics. F-18s were mid-refueling at a coastal base. Nothing was within 15 minutes of J-11, the coordinate where Alpha 3 was about to be overrun. A young operations officer hesitated, then spoke. "Sir, there's a pilot outside the zone, not on the flight list. She's in an A-10C and says she's ready to assist." McAllister turned, incredulous. "A 10? That thing's a relic." I said, "Jets." "Yes, sir, but she's already airborne." "What?" "Her call sign is Raven 13. That name hung in the air like a ghost. McAllister stared. "That call sign's retired, scrubbed after Operation Hoarfrost." No one replied. Before he could demand further answers, a low growl began to vibrate through the base, the kind of rumble that crept up your spine before you could name it. Outside the war room, windows shook. The comms team turned toward the radar screens. One signature had just entered the J-11 airspace, unauthorized. "She's not responding to hails," said the communications officer, maintaining radio silence. A junior radar analyst muttered, "Sir, she's vectoring directly toward Alpha 3. McAllister's jaw tightened. "That's a violation of every protocol in the book. I want her ID. I want her grounded. Now." But the A-10 didn't slow down. It flew lower, closer, with a kind of confidence that suggested this wasn't the first time the pilot had done this. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. In the battered trench line near J-11, Alpha 3 wasn't waiting for permission either. Any station, any station." Their squad leader called through the static. "This is Alpha 3. We are taking heavy fire, requesting immediate air support. We can't hold." Static. Then, "Alpha 3, this is Raven 13. I have eyes on your position." Back in the war room, silence fell like a curtain. Every screen, every frequency, every person focused in. McAllister grabbed the mic. "Raven 13, you are not authorized for this mission. Return to base immediately." The woman's voice came back, steady, calm. "Alpha 3 doesn't have time for protocols, Colonel." And then the radio cut. The screens tracked her approach. 300 feet. Visual targeting only. No laser, no satellite lock. Just pilot and machine, rolling in low through fog and chaos. McAllister stared. There was no time to debate. No time to argue. No time to wait for a rescue that would never arrive. He lifted the mic slowly, voice low. "Raven 13, you're cleared to engage." No answer. She was already moving. The radar blinked once, then again. Low altitude, sub 300 feet, no transponder, no flight clearance. "Sir, we've got an aircraft approaching the J-11 sector, west vector, low profile," said the radar tech, fingers flying over his keyboard. "Looks like an A-10. Colonel McAllister turned sharply. "That's impossible. Every warthog's grounded or mothballed." "Then this one didn't get the memo," the tech muttered. The room tensed. Operations officers leaned in, watching the blip move like a shark through shallow water, hugging the terrain, dipping into valleys, vanishing under sensor coverage only to pop back up with uncanny timing. "She's using terrain masking," someone whispered. How the hell is she flying that low without slamming into the ridgeline? Another asked. McAllister stepped forward. Put her on screen. Visual feed now. A drone camera, rerouted from a surveillance balloon, locked onto a shadow slipping between cloud banks and rock formations. An unmistakable silhouette took shape. Twin engines, stubby wings, and a rugged fuselage built like a brawler. The A-10 Thunderbolt II, the Warthog. But this one was different. The hull looked patched and customized. Sensors were non-standard. The paint was matte, almost hand-touched. No unit insignia, no tailcode. Call sign? McAllister barked. The comms officer flipped through the records. Only one pinged identifier, Raven 13. Check it again. I did. Raven 13's been retired for 3 years, last seen during Operation Hoarfrost. A quiet hum filled the war room, the kind that came not from equipment, but from the collective tension of people realizing something wasn't normal. Who authorized this sortie? McAllister demanded. The support officer swallowed hard. No one, sir. She launched herself. You're telling me a rogue pilot just inserted herself into an active war zone without clearance? Yes, sir. Before McAllister could explode, the radar tech cut in. She's approaching J-11, velocity stable. Angle suggests she's targeting enemy artillery. The colonel stared at the screen. She doesn't have a lock. Fog's too thick for laser guidance. She's going visual. That's suicide. No, sir, the former A-10 pilot in the back of the room murmured. That's old school. Outside, the low, guttural roar of twin turbofans echoed across the valley. Soldiers on the ground looked up to see a ghost, metallic wings tearing through cloud cover, a hunter without orders. Back in the war room, the colonel finally spoke, quieter now. Who the hell is flying that thing? No one answered. The blip on the screen descended toward the enemy lines. Alpha 3, this is base. Air support is en route. ETA approximately 17. Base, we don't have 17 minutes. The voice crackled, strained by gunfire and panic. We're surrounded. They've got mortars dialed in. We're not gonna... Alpha 3, this is Raven 13. I have eyes on your position. The radio room fell completely silent. Heads snapped toward the speaker. That's her, the comms officer whispered. Colonel McAllister grabbed the nearest headset. Raven 13, you are not authorized for this mission. You are ordered to return to base immediately. There was a pause, the kind that feels longer than it is. Then her voice returned, calm, low, no trace of hesitation. With all due respect, Colonel, Alpha 3 doesn't have time for protocol. Stand down. That's a direct order. I don't wait anymore, she replied, because once I did, and no one lived to thank me. The frequency went dead. McAllister clenched his fist, staring at the radar display. The A-10 was already adjusting altitude, lining up, beginning her attack run. She's ignoring orders, someone shouted. She's saving lives, countered another. She's reckless. She's the only damn thing in the sky. The debate dissolved the moment the ground feed came through. Body cams on Alpha 3 captured the approach. Raven 13's A-10 roaring just feet above the treetops. The engines howled like something primal, shaking leaves and hearts alike. Someone's up there, a soldier shouted on the comms. We've got a bird in the sky. In the war room, the targeting officer was stunned. Sir, she's flying without GPS lock, no laser, no satellite relay. She's using visual marks, the older pilot said, almost reverently. I haven't seen that done since Afghanistan. Fog blanketed the valley. The enemy's artillery positions were cleverly concealed, scattered through gullies and brush. It should have been impossible. But Raven 13 wasn't aiming with instruments. She was flying by instinct, by memory, by sight and gut. She dipped low, vanished behind a ridgeline, and reappeared in a banking turn so tight it almost stalled the aircraft. And then, BRRRRT. The GAU-8 Avenger cannon thundered across the valley floor. 3 rapid bursts. Precise, controlled, no spray, no panic. Down below, each artillery nest erupted in a plume of fire and debris, one after another. Each hit clean, each strike surgically placed. In the war room, no one spoke. There was no cheering, no applause, only awe. Silence born of witnessing something impossible executed like routine. Then, a voice from Alpha 3 came through, this time calm, filled with disbelief. Base. This is Alpha 3. Target positions neutralized. We're alive. The feed showed soldiers looking up, some crouched in shock, others laughing, crying. One man dropped to his knees and simply whispered, "Thank you." McAllister set the headset down slowly. "What now, sir?" someone asked. The colonel stared at the screen where Raven 13 was already banking away, her flight path silent and smooth, vanishing back into fog. "We wait," he said quietly. "She's not done yet." The battle ended not with orders, but with silence. Smoke drifted over the valley floor as Raven 13's A-10 pulled up and away, leaving behind a landscape of fire and fractured steel. The three enemy artillery positions that had pinned Alpha 3 were now burning wreckage, each one destroyed with surgical accuracy. Inside the trenches, the soldiers of Alpha 3 were frozen in place, not from fear, from disbelief. Did that just happen?" one of them whispered. Staff Sergeant Elias Vega, the unit leader, stood slowly, weapon still gripped tight, scanning the smoldering ridgelines. "Warthog," he said softly. "We just got saved by a damn warthog." And then someone laughed. It started quiet. One chuckle, then another, and suddenly the tension snapped. The entire squad erupted into relieved, almost delirious laughter. Some hugged. One soldier dropped his helmet and kissed the dirt. From the war room, the emotional aftermath came through the body cams and open comms. No one in command said a word. They simply watched. Then came the transmission that would etch itself into base history. "Base, this is Alpha 3. All hostiles neutralized. No casualties. We're moving to extraction." McAllister leaned in to the mic. "Alpha 3, can you confirm? Who provided your air support?" A beat passed. Then Vega responded, his voice steady and full of something more than gratitude. "Reverence." She didn't give a name, just a call sign, Raven 13. Gasps rippled through the ops room. "Alpha 3, can you describe the strike?" "Yes, sir. 3 targets eliminated. Fog conditions thick. No friendly fire. No overkill. She fired in bursts. Controlled. Each shot counted. Sir, it was like she knew exactly where they were." McAllister turned to the weapons data officer. "How many rounds did she expend?" The tech scrolled through tracking logs. 60, sir. That's barely a tenth of a load." 60? "Yes, sir, and 3 confirmed kills." "That's unheard of." A former A-10 pilot standing nearby shook his head. "That's not luck, that's legacy." McAllister narrowed his eyes. "Explain." "That kind of precision? That's someone who's had to hit targets when it mattered. When missing meant funerals. When you don't get a second pass." The colonel looked back at the radar screen. Raven 13 had already exited the engagement zone. Her transponder still off. No return message, no request for landing clearance. "Where is she going?" someone asked. "She's gone," the radar tech said. "Dropped below tracking, no way to follow." McAllister stood still, silent. Then came one final message. "Base, Alpha 3 transmitted. We just wanted you to know, whoever she is, that pilot saved all 12 of us. Every damn one. It wasn't a mission. It was a miracle." She disappeared as quickly as she had come. No one saw her land, no visual confirmation, no after-action comms. Raven 13 was gone. But she'd left behind something no one could ignore. 12 living soldiers in a battlefield burned clean by impossible precision. Colonel McAllister stood over the radar screen long after the signal vanished. Around him, officers whispered, reviewed telemetry, and argued protocol. But McAllister wasn't interested in procedures anymore. He wanted to know who had just flown into a war zone without orders and pulled off the cleanest close air support mission his base had ever witnessed. "Pull up the call sign," he said. "Raven 13. The communications officer hesitated. "Sir, that designation was deactivated 3 years ago. It's not on any active roster." "Then check the archived ones." "Sir, that file's classified." McAllister turned slowly. "I don't care." The room went still. The technician nodded and began typing. As the file loaded, a name flashed across the screen. Nyasha Reinhardt, A-10C pilot. Former call sign, Raven 13, status discharged. A few in the room recognized it. Most didn't. But those who did grew quiet. The personnel file was thin, but precise. Removed from active duty following Operation Hoarfrost, the tech read aloud. Reason, disobedience of direct orders. McAllister's brow furrowed. I've heard of Hoarfrost. That op went sideways. High casualty rate. The tech nodded. It was a disaster, sir. GPS blackout. Enemy SAMs were heavier than intel suggested. 6 aircraft down in the first wave. A second officer chimed in. Reinhardt, she flew back in, didn't she? The tech nodded again. 17 times. Extracted survivors under fire. Visual-only nav. 0 support. Took a hit on the final run. Landed on a highway with failing hydraulics. Let me guess, McAllister said bitterly. She got court-martialed. No, sir. They gave her a choice. Admit fault and take a reprimand, or stand by her decision and face dismissal. And she chose dismissal. The tech didn't need to check. Yes, sir, she said, and I quote, I will not apologize for bringing 18 people home alive. Silence again. McAllister stared at the screen, where Nyasha's file now glowed with simple defiance. No rank, no commendation, just the note. Not cleared for reassignment. But she hadn't disappeared. Not really. Someone had kept flying, kept showing up. In the margins of the official system, there were whispers. Over the past 3 years, 17 unexplained air support events. Too precise, too fast, too low to be standard operations. Each one in areas where command had deemed rescue too dangerous. And now, today, Alpha 3. It couldn't be coincidence. McAllister stared at the name again. Nyasha Reinhardt. The pilot who disobeyed and saved everyone. The name still carried weight. Hoarfrost, even among officers who hadn't served there, it hovered like a warning. The kind of op whispered about in after-hours conversations, never briefed in public. McAllister had never known the full story. Now he would. Play the archive footage, he ordered. The screen lit up with satellite imagery, audio logs, and the mission briefing from 3 years prior. Hoarfrost was supposed to be a joint sweep. A clean operation. Intelligence claimed the region was only lightly defended, enough for one mixed squadron of air support to secure an extraction corridor for a trapped reconnaissance team. But the intel was wrong. Dead wrong. They had state-of-the-art SAMs, the technician explained. Multiple mobile launchers, infrared-guided. Worse, an active jamming array took out GPS and encrypted radio comms within the first 5 minutes. Everything went dark, said a senior officer quietly. We lost 6 aircraft before we even knew what hit us. The recon team was stranded, scattered, no coordinates, no radio, no rescue route. Command issued the order, stand down. Losses were deemed acceptable. Rescue attempts were terminated. That should have been the end. But one pilot disagreed. Nyasha Reinhardt. The logs showed what little telemetry survived. Raven 13's A-10 lifting off from a forward field, without clearance, without support, into a zone covered in fog, snow, and hostile fire. Her comms were cut the moment she entered the jamming field, the tech explained. She flew blind. Then how the hell did she find them, someone asked. She didn't find them, the technician said. She hunted them. One by one, the logs tracked her approach runs, 17 in total. Each time she flew lower, slower, drawing fire away from ground troops, coordinating extraction visually with hand signals and colored smoke. She used the A-10 like a moving shield, said the former Warthog pilot, absorbed fire so ground teams could pull people out. 17 trips, McAllister murmured. In a combat zone that command had already given up on. The final run was the worst. Flight logs showed multiple systems failing. Hydraulics, gone. Navigation, fried. One engine sputtering. Flight control barely functional. But she didn't turn back. She found the last group of survivors, dug in behind a collapsed ravine. shielded them during extraction, took 2 more hits. She limped the A-10 back on one wing in half a prayer, landed it on a frozen stretch of highway outside base, climbed out soaked in fuel, frostbitten and shaking. 18 people lived. Because she said no. Because she flew anyway. Back in the present, McAllister stared at the frozen footage, an A-10, scarred and scorched, resting in the snow. A line of soldiers standing beside it, looking up at the woman who wouldn't let them die. They should have given her a medal, he said. The senior officer nodded. Instead, they gave her a discharge. The hearing was closed door. No press, no cameras, no public record. Nyasha Reinhardt sat alone at the long table, hands folded, eyes steady. Across from her, 3 officers reviewed a folder thick with contradictions: unauthorized takeoff, breach of chain of command, insubordination, and 18 confirmed lives saved. Her flight logs had been reconstructed manually, damage reports verified. Every survivor had submitted written testimony. Several had shown up in person, lining the hallway outside the tribunal room, hoping their presence would matter. It didn't. "We recognize your actions were courageous," the lead officer had said, voice measured and cold. "But they violated direct orders. Protocol exists for a reason." Nyasha didn't flinch. "Protocol exists to serve the mission," she replied, "not to abandon it." "You had a choice," they reminded her. "You could have waited. We might have re-engaged the rescue under safer conditions." She looked at them, her voice unwavering. They didn't have time to wait. There was a moment, brief, almost imperceptible, when one of the officers shifted uncomfortably, but the decision had already been made. The system couldn't afford to endorse rogue actions, no matter how heroic. "You're being offered a path forward," the officer said. "Accept an official reprimand. Return to flight status." "And admit I was wrong?" she asked. "Yes." Nyasha stood, calm but resolute. "Then I decline." Her final words were simple. "I will not apologize for bringing 18 people home alive. If that's grounds for dismissal, then dismiss me." And they did. The base's most experienced A-10 pilot. Gone. No ceremony, no medals, no reassignment. Just a signature. And a silence that tasted like shame. Outside, the survivors watched as she exited the tribunal building alone. One of them saluted. Another tried to speak, but couldn't. Nyasha nodded to them, but said nothing. She had already said everything that mattered. They thought she was gone. Her personnel file marked inactive. Her aircraft logged as decommissioned. Her name scrubbed from flight rosters. But then, the rescue started. The first one was dismissed as coincidence. A reconnaissance team, cut off during a blizzard in Eastern Europe, reported being shielded by an unidentified A-10 that appeared out of nowhere, drew fire, and disappeared before ground teams arrived. No pilot claimed the sortie. No aircraft matched the description. The mission had already been declared too risky by command. Then came the second. Then the third. By the time Colonel McAllister's team dug through 3 years of logs, they had found 17 such incidents, all eerily similar. Shug. Locations abandoned by official rescue units. Shug. Extreme weather or enemy air dominance. Shug. 0 casualties. Shug. A warthog-shaped ghost in the sky. Shug. "She's monitoring us," McAllister said in disbelief. "She's listening." It sounded paranoid, but the pattern didn't lie. Every time a mission was officially shut down, when command made the call to walk away, someone else didn't. "She would have needed access to encrypted channels," the security officer objected. "She had that access," McAllister replied. "Maybe she never gave it up." "But that's illegal." "And so is letting good people die." McAllister stood over a large table filled with maps and mission logs. He traced his finger across the pins, every unofficial rescue location marked in red. 17 incidents, 67 lives saved. He looked around the room. No backup, no orders, no glory, just a pilot who refused to stop doing the job. Someone asked quietly, "What do we call this?" McAllister didn't hesitate. "We call it Raven 13. The A-10 appeared one morning at Auxiliary Field A-17. No flight plan. No tower communication. Just a low fog, tire marks on the tarmac, and an old bird that looked like it had flown straight out of a forgotten war. Maintenance crews were first to find it. The hull was battered but cared for. Panels reinforced with custom armor. Avionics upgraded far beyond regulation spec. Inside the cockpit, a note sat neatly folded. "I don't ask to be thanked. I just need to know they made it home." Signed simply, R13. When Colonel McAllister arrived, he waved off the security cordon. "Don't impound it," he told the base commander. "Move it to Hangar 7, quietly." From that day on, the rules changed. Hangar 7 became a place of unofficial reverence. Its doors remained locked, except at night. No one saw who came, but the A-10 was always clean, tuned, topped off, combat ready. "They say she visits when no one's watching," one young mechanic whispered. "Sir, do we investigate?" asked the base security chief. McAllister shook his head. Some things work better without interference. The legend grew quickly. A small metal plaque appeared on the wall of base headquarters. No announcement, no ceremony, just a silhouette of an A-10 flying through smoke. Below it, etched in steel, Raven 13. For those who fly when others cannot. New pilots were told the story in quiet tones. "If you're ever on a mission and no one answers the call, just wait," the veterans would say. She might already be in the sky. Some didn't believe, until they heard the growl of those twin engines in the dark. The plaque became more than a name. It became a promise that someone, somewhere, still put lives above paperwork. That there was still one last line of defense when the system said no. And in Hangar 7, the Warthog waited. 2 years later, Colonel Douglas McAllister retired. At his farewell ceremony, the base flag fluttered behind him. Rows of aircrew, new and old, stood at attention. Among them were some of the men from Alpha 3, quiet, alive. McAllister stepped up to the podium and cleared his throat. "You'll read a lot of manuals in this job," he began, "but there will come a moment when the book doesn't have an answer." He paused. "When the call comes, and your systems say no, but your conscience says go." A few nodded, others held still, listening. That's when you remember, some missions aren't about rank, or protocol, or chain of command. They're about bringing people home. He turned toward the far wall of the hangar, where a small steel plaque now sat permanently mounted. Raven 13. For those who fly when others cannot. McAllister let the silence stretch. Then he said, quietly but firmly, "She was never on the mission roster, but she never stopped flying." After the ceremony, base personnel entered Hangar 7 and found something new in the cockpit of the old A-10. A folded paper. Same handwriting. "Thank you for understanding that some things are bigger than regulations." Nash R13. Nyasha Reinhardt was never seen again, at least not officially, but the rescues continued. Over the next 3 years, the aircraft in Hangar 7 flew 12 more missions. Always when it was too late. Always when the call had gone unanswered. Each time, the enemy neutralized. The friendly saved. No claim, no signature, no broadcast. Only a name whispered through the ranks, Raven 13. The protocol became legend. The legend became culture. Instructors told new pilots, "You may never meet her, but if you hear the warthog's cry in the clouds, don't panic. That's hope arriving before authorization." And long after discharge papers fade, long after names rotate off the duty roster, one truth remains. Some missions don't need approval. They just need someone brave enough to fly. Not all heroes wear medals. Some wear silence. Some operate in the shadows. And some fly when others are grounded. The story of Raven 13 isn't just about a rogue pilot or an outdated aircraft. It's about what happens when morality and protocol collide. It forces us to ask a hard question. When following orders means letting people die, what do you do? Nyasha Reinhardt answered that question, not with words, but with flight. She sacrificed recognition, career, and status for something far greater, the chance to bring people home. In a world dominated by systems, checklists, and bureaucratic boundaries, we forget that human life doesn't fit inside a procedure manual. And sometimes, the right decision is the one that doesn't come with approval stamps. This story reminds us that true leadership doesn't always come from the top of the chain of command. Sometimes, it comes from the bottom of the radar, silent, uncredited, but unforgettable. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that doing the right thing isn't always about following the rules, then let us know. Hit that like button. Drop a comment below. What would you have done in Nyasha's place? Share this with someone who believes in doing what's right even when it's hard. And don't forget to subscribe, we've got more stories that cut deeper than headlines. Have you ever broken the rules for the right reason? Would you risk your job to save a life? Your answer might say more about you than any uniform ever could. A retired Navy medic finds a suspicious package on a commuter train, and what he does next sparks an investigation no one saw coming. Don't miss it.